The world thought they knew the truth about Malcolm Jamal Warner, but at midnight, everything shattered. The screen lit up with a single post. No press conference. No interview. No long explanation. Just one photo and 5 words that ripped millions of hearts to pieces. Now you know the truth. The photo wasn't a memory. It wasn't a tribute. It was a marriage certificate. Signed, sealed, stamped. His name, her name, together. And in that instant, the entire world realized Karen Malina White wasn't just a forgotten love. She wasn't just a shadow in his past. She was his wife. The silence that followed was deafening. Twitter exploded with cries of disbelief. Instagram flooded with one single haunting comment over and over again. I wish this was a lie. But the pain only deepened, because moments later, another post surfaced. A grainy video of Malcolm himself, standing under dim lights, holding a sheet of paper, his voice trembling, reading words not for a crowd, not for applause, but for her, for Karen. And his final line, the one that broke millions across the globe, "You are not just my love. You are my legal beginning." People screamed. People sobbed. TikTok drowned in reaction videos of fans gasping, collapsing, crying uncontrollably. And when the world begged Karen to explain why now, her answer cut like a knife. Because Malcolm asked me to. He told me to love him quietly. I did. But now, I will grieve him loudly. This wasn't a tribute. This was a revelation. A secret marriage. A stolen truth. And the world may never be the same. The internet was never ready for this. Midnight struck, and while the world slept in silence, one woman pressed upload, and history changed forever. Karen Malina White, the woman so many had dismissed as nothing more than a fleeting memory in Malcolm Jamal Warner's past, returned with one single post that turned the entire world upside down. For years, she had been silent. No interviews, no press, no attention-seeking. Just silence. People thought she had moved on, disappeared, erased from the story. But silence does not mean absence. Silence sometimes means waiting for the right moment to scream. And when she screamed, the world broke. The photo hit harder than any scandal, any rumor, any tabloid ever could. A marriage certificate. Real. Tangible. Government sealed. With one name the world knew, and another name they thought they had forgotten. Malcolm Jamal Warner. Karen Malina White. Together. Husband and wife. In black ink, signed and stamped forever. Fans gasped, clutching their phones, unable to breathe. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It wasn't just whispers of were they or weren't they. It was real. They weren't lovers in the shadows. They weren't just a Hollywood fling. They were married, legally bound, a truth buried so deep it took Malcolm's death to bring it to the surface. And yet Karen gave no long caption, no paragraph, no sobbing video, just 5 words that cut deeper than a knife. Now you know the truth. Those words echoed like a funeral bell. Twitter erupted in disbelief. TikTok drowned in reaction videos. Instagram comments filled with crying emojis and broken hearts. Thousands of fans wrote the same desperate plea. Please let this be fake. But it wasn't. The ink on the certificate was as real as the tears streaming down the faces of millions. But before the internet could even catch its breath, Karen pressed upload again. And this time, it wasn't a document. It was Malcolm himself. The grainy footage shook like it had been recorded decades ago. The lighting dim, the sound raw, but his voice unmistakable. Malcolm stood with a sheet of paper in his hands. He wasn't acting. He wasn't performing. His eyes weren't locked on a crowd or a camera. They were fixed on her. Karen. And as his lips trembled, he read words that felt like vows the world was never meant to hear. Karen, my beginning. My ending. My only. The room fell silent. Fans watching online clutched their chests, their screens blurred by tears. And then came the line that tore open the internet like an earthquake. You are not just my love. You are my legal beginning. It was no longer speculation, no longer rumor. It was a husband confessing love to his wife, a wife the world never acknowledged. That single sentence silenced even the loudest critics. For years, others had claimed pieces of Malcolm. Whispered stories, hidden children, secret engagements. But nothing screamed louder than proof. And Karen had proof. Within minutes, the hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Malcolm's wife. Hashtag justice for Karen. Hashtag now we know. Entire timelines flooded with heartbreak. Fans cried live on stream, shaking, sobbing, unable to process what they had just witnessed. TikTokers fell to the floor in hysterics, some literally collapsing mid-recording. One viral clip showed a fan screaming into the camera, "They lied to us. They all lied to us." And in that moment, millions believed it. But the internet wanted more. If she was his wife, why now? Why hide it all these years? Why let the world speculate, fight, and argue while she stayed silent? Karen's answer was as haunting as the truth itself. Because Malcolm asked me to. He told me to love him quietly. I did. But now, I will grieve him loudly. Those words carved themselves into history. Screenshots of her message spread like wildfire. People wrote them on posters, on murals, in captions under black and white photos of Malcolm. Some tattooed the line on their arms within hours. He told me to love him quietly. I did. But now I will grieve him loudly. It became more than a statement. It became a movement. But beneath the heartbreak lay a storm the world couldn't ignore. Because this revelation wasn't just emotional. It was legal. For months, Tracee Ellis Ross had claimed she was Malcolm's secret wife. She spoke of a child, of DNA tests, of a $200 million life insurance payout she believed belonged to her and her daughter. Her claims shook the entertainment world, leaving fans divided and confused. Some believed her, others doubted. But with Karen's revelation, everything shifted. If Karen was the legal wife, Tracee's entire story fell apart. The marriage license erased her claims. The vows Malcolm spoke on video annihilated her narrative. And the life insurance? That money was no longer Tracee's dream to chase. Legally, it belonged to Karen. And that's when the internet went from grieving to raging. Fans demanded answers. Had Tracee lied this entire time? Was the child really Malcolm's? Were the DNA tests fake, manipulated, staged for attention? Blogs exploded with theories. Podcasts dropped emergency episodes, dissecting every detail. Court analysts weighed in, saying if Karen's documents held up in court, Tracee's case was dead in the water. But for fans, this wasn't just about money or lawsuits. It was about love. A love story stolen, hidden from them, buried behind Hollywood whispers and silence. They felt betrayed. They had mourned Malcolm one way, when all along, his truth was waiting in Karen's hands. The heartbreak reached its peak when Karen posted one final photo. A simple, unedited shot. Malcolm sitting at a dinner table, smiling, his hand over hers. No glam, no red carpet, just love. And her caption? 5 words that became immortal. You asked me to wait. Fans couldn't take it. Thousands claimed they broke down at work, on buses, in classrooms. Videos surfaced of entire families sobbing together as they watched Karen's posts. One mother filmed her teenage daughter crumbling into tears, whispering, "He loved her all along." It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a tragedy that unfolded in real time, in the digital age, with millions of witnesses grieving alongside a widow they never knew existed. And as the first 24 hours passed, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Because if Karen was the wife, then Tracee wasn't just wrong. She might have lied to the entire world, and the fallout would be explosive. The internet had barely recovered from Karen's midnight revelations when the storm took a darker turn. What began as heartbreak was now spiraling into outrage, betrayal, and whispers of deception at the highest level. Tracee Ellis Ross, once painted as the grieving partner, once believed by millions to have been Malcolm Jamal Warner's secret wife, suddenly stood at the center of a firestorm. Her story, her claims, her tears on live interviews were now being questioned in ways nobody thought possible. For months, Tracy had commanded the headlines. She told the world she had shared vows with Malcolm. She cried as she spoke of a daughter, their hidden child, the DNA tests that proved everything. She even demanded her rightful share of his fortune, pointing to a $200 million insurance policy as evidence of his commitment to her. And fans believed it. They wept with her, supported her, defended her against critics. But Karen's marriage certificate tore her story apart. Legally, there could not have been two wives. And Karen's proof, cold, signed, stamped, carried the kind of weight Tracy's tears never could. Suddenly, Tracy's emotional breakdowns were being replayed under a different lens. People weren't crying with her anymore. They were questioning her. Some even accusing her. Was this all a lie? One fan tweeted, "Did Tracy scam the entire world?" Another asked. TikTok comments flooded with disbelief. Karen has the papers. That's all that matters. Tracy lied. Within hours, hashtags flipped. Hashtag Justice for Karen clashed against hashtag Tracy Exposed. What once was a united front of grief now fractured into chaos. But the pain for fans wasn't just legal. It was emotional. For weeks, they had cried with Tracy. They had mourned Malcolm believing her story. And now they felt robbed, not only of the truth, but of their own grief. They had mourned the wrong widow. Their hearts had bled for the wrong love story. One viral clip showed a fan screaming into the camera through tears. Do you know what it feels like to cry every night for her, to pray for her healing, and then find out the real wife was silent the whole time? We mourned the wrong person. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was betrayal.
But Karen?
She didn't lash out. She didn't curse Tracy or accuse her. She didn't defend herself with anger. She let the documents speak. She let the videos of Malcolm speak. She let his words, trembling, soft, immortal, echo across every platform. And that quiet dignity only made the world love her more. Yet behind the tears, a storm was brewing. Because this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about power, property, and legacy. If Karen was legally Malcolm's wife, the law was on her side. The insurance money, the estate, the royalties, everything Tracy had claimed was now Karen's by right. And in Hollywood, nothing unleashes chaos faster than money tied to scandal. Lawyers began circling. News outlets reported that Tracy's team was scrambling to review the validity of Karen's marriage license. Rumors spread that Tracy would contest it, claiming it was forged or expired. But the stamp was real. The signatures matched. And with every forensic analyst confirming authenticity, Tracy's defense crumbled. The public wasn't forgiving. They dug up old interviews where Tracy had subtly hinted at a marriage. They replayed moments where she implied she was Malcolm's only love. And now, every clip became a weapon. Memes flooded Twitter, side-by-side photos of Karen's marriage license and Tracy crying on stage, captioned with one brutal line, "Receipts don't lie." But the cruelty of the internet didn't stop there. Fans began tagging Tracy under every post with one chilling phrase, "Where's your certificate?" It was no longer about sympathy. It was about proof. And Tracy had none. Meanwhile, Karen's silence spoke volumes. She didn't gloat. She didn't clap back. Instead, she released one final piece of evidence that pushed the world over the edge. A short clip, barely 30 seconds long. Malcolm's voice, gentle but unshakable. "To my wife, Karen, you are my everything, my partner, my beginning, my forever." The words were simple, but they destroyed everything. Within minutes, the clip spread to every platform. People posted their raw reactions, some screaming, some sobbing, some collapsing on camera as they listened to Malcolm call her my wife. Entire families gathered in living rooms, watching the video together and breaking down in tears. One viral TikTok showed a grandmother clutching her chest, whispering, "He loved her, he really loved her," before breaking into sobs. Another showed a teenager throwing her phone across the room before burying her face in her hands, crying uncontrollably. The heartbreak was unbearable, because this wasn't just proof. It was love. A love story hidden, silenced, stolen from the public eye, now revealed when it was far too late to celebrate it. And the pain cut deeper when fans asked the question nobody wanted to answer. Why did Malcolm hide it? Why did he make Karen love him quietly? Karen's explanation was devastating. He wanted peace. He didn't want the world in our home. He wanted our love to belong to us, not the cameras. And I respected him. I loved him in silence because he asked me to, but now that he's gone, I refuse to let our love stay buried. He deserves the world to know who I really was to him. Those words became the most quoted lines of the year. Songs were written around them. Poets recited them in cafes. Fans painted murals across cities with Malcolm and Karen's faces beside the phrase, "I loved him in silence. I'll grieve him in noise." But as the world mourned, Tracy's empire crumbled. Brand endorsements pulled back. Critics called her story a fraud. Entertainment panels debated whether she had knowingly deceived fans. Her once glowing reputation dimmed under the weight of Karen's quiet truth. Yet through it all, Karen didn't dance on her pain. She didn't claim victory. Her posts weren't about money, or revenge, or proving anyone wrong. They were about love. About giving her husband, her real husband, the dignity he deserved in death. And that, more than anything, broke people beyond repair. Because at the end of the day, the world wasn't just watching a scandal. They were watching a tragedy. A woman who loved in silence, now grieving in public. A man who promised forever but left too soon. A truth hidden, stolen, and revealed only when it was too late to live it. And as fans cried themselves to sleep, one thought haunted them all. If Malcolm had lived, would we have ever known? The storm that started online didn't stay online for long. Within days, Karen's revelation moved from social media feeds to the cold, echoing halls of the courtroom. It was no longer about hashtags or viral tears.
Now, it was about law.
About legacy. About who Malcolm Jamal Warner really belonged to, not just in the eyes of fans, but in the eyes of justice. On one side stood Karen Malina White, silent, grieving, armed only with documents, videos, and the quiet truth she had carried for decades. On the other side stood Tracy Ellis Ross, powerful, influential, but cornered, clinging to the fragments of a story now shattered before the entire world. The courtroom was packed. Fans lined up outside, holding candles, signs, and posters of Malcolm's face. Some carried Karen's haunting line, "I loved him in silence. I'll grieve him in noise." Others simply whispered prayers, their faces wet with tears, as if they were watching history unravel. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Karen sat in black, clutching a folded paper, the marriage license, like it was a piece of her own heart. She didn't look at Tracy. She didn't look at the cameras. She stared down, her body trembling as if Malcolm's ghost was sitting beside her, whispering courage into her ears. Tracy, by contrast, arrived in silence, her once radiant aura dimmed. The cameras still followed her, but the adoration was gone. The public no longer saw her as a grieving widow. They saw her as a pretender, someone who had stolen tears that didn't belong to her. And the weight of that shame clung to her every step. The lawyers didn't waste time. Karen's attorney rose first, voice steady, words sharp. "Your Honor, this case isn't about fame. It isn't about public opinion. It is about one thing, the truth. And the truth is that my client, Karen Malina White, was and is the only legal wife of Malcolm Jamal Warner." He placed the marriage certificate on the judge's bench. The sound of paper hitting would echoed like thunder. Cameras clicked. Fans outside screamed as words spread through live tweets. Tracy's lawyer tried to fight back, calling the marriage license questionable. He claimed it was dated and possibly irrelevant. But then came the moment nobody could deny, the expert witnesses. Handwriting analysts confirmed Malcolm's signature. Court clerks validated the stamp. Every forensic test proved authenticity. And then, the bombshell, Karen's team played the 30-second audio clip. Malcolm's trembling voice filled the courtroom. "To my wife, Karen. You are my everything. My partner, my beginning, my forever." The room fell silent. Reporters froze mid-note. Even the judge leaned back, visibly shaken. And in the gallery, fans broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Some clutched their chests. Others whispered Malcolm's words as if repeating a prayer. Tracy's face drained of color. She looked away, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. For the first time, she wasn't the center of sympathy. She was the center of silence. But Karen? She didn't cry. Not in that moment. Her tears had already been shed in silence for years. Now, all she showed was resolve. A love she didn't need to perform, because it was written in ink, sealed in law, and immortalized in Malcolm's own voice. The judge's words were short but devastating. The evidence is clear. The court recognizes Karen Malina White as the legal spouse of Malcolm Jamal Warner. All claims contesting this marriage are hereby dismissed. And just like that, it was over. Outside, the world erupted. Crowds wept in the streets. Fans lit candles, chanting Karen's name, chanting Malcolm's name, chanting the word truth. On social media, timelines flooded with clips of Karen leaving the courthouse, her head bowed, her face streaked with tears. But those tears were not of defeat. They were of release. For the first time in years, she was no longer a secret. She was seen. She was recognized. She was his wife. Meanwhile, Tracy vanished. Her team released a brief statement. "We respect the court's decision, but it did nothing to stop the collapse." Her reputation, once untouchable, was in ruins. Endorsements gone. Invitations withdrawn. Public opinion brutal. What had once been a career defined by glamour was now overshadowed by one word: liar. But the tragedy didn't feel like Tracy's downfall. It felt like Malcolm's unfinished story. Because fans couldn't stop asking, why didn't he tell the world himself? Why did he make Karen suffer in silence? Why was their love hidden until the very end? Karen answered in one final post, the last she would ever make on the subject. A simple photo of her hand resting on Malcolm's tombstone, her wedding ring glinting in the moonlight. The caption was only one line. "You told me to love you quietly, but I will mourn you so loudly the world will never forget." That line spread like wildfire. Murals of it appeared on city walls. Artists engraved it into paintings. Fans tattooed it on their skin. It became a movement, a mantra, a cry for every hidden love story silenced by time, fear, or circumstance. And yet, even in her victory, Karen's pain was unbearable. She had the recognition. She had the legal title. She had the proof. But she didn't have him. And that void, that endless ache, was the real tragedy. One viral fan video captured the heartbreak perfectly. A young woman sat in her car, mascara streaming down her face, whispering. She didn't want money. She didn't want fame. She just wanted the world to know she was his. And now that we know he's gone, that's the cruelest part. We can't celebrate their love. We can only mourn it. And that was the truth that broke millions. This wasn't a fairy tale revealed. It was a love story buried too soon, dragged into the light only through grief. Karen Malina White had given the world the truth. But the truth didn't heal. It hurt. It tore open wounds that would never close. It left fans sobbing, screaming, clinging to the memory of a man who should have lived long enough to tell his story himself. And as the world moved on, one haunting image remained. Karen, standing alone in black, holding the certificate against her chest, whispering into the night sky as if Malcolm could still hear her. Not as a fan, not as a friend, but as his wife. Forever. And now, as the dust settles, one question remains. What do we do with the truth? Because the truth isn't soft. It isn't gentle. Tonight, the truth broke millions of hearts. Tonight, the truth revealed a love that was hidden, silenced, tucked away in shadows, only to be exposed through pain. Karen Malina White didn't fight for fame. She didn't fight for cameras. She didn't even fight for sympathy. She fought for one thing, to be recognized as what she always was, his wife. And that's the part that cuts the deepest. All the money, all the headlines, all the gossip, none of it mattered to her. All she wanted was to stand beside his name, not as a rumor, not as a whisper, but as the woman he vowed his life to. So tonight, if you're watching this, don't just see a scandal. See the sacrifice. See the silence she carried for decades. See the love that never got its chance to breathe in public until it was too late. Maybe this is why people can't stop crying. Because deep down, we all know love like that should never have to hide. And now it's your turn. If your heart broke watching Karen's truth unfold, if you felt her pain, her silence, her strength, then don't let her story fade. Share this video. Comment the words she left us with. I loved him quietly, but I will grieve him loudly. Let the world hear it. Let the world never forget it. Because some stories don't just deserve to be told. They deserve to echo forever.